Okay, welcome back to Script Camp. We're here with a new one-off TV bootcamp class called Writing the Spec Episode. Let's jump right in. So we're part of Skill Camp, which is a nonprofit that offers free and low-cost skills training, reskilling, and business development education globally, which focuses on underserved communities and basically is a series of servers that you can join, which will offer free classes to help you reach your life skills or build life skills to reach your life goals. We've got lots of topics, which you can see behind me here. Our biggest one is Script Camp, which is focused on screenwriting and TV writing, and that one has over 5,000 members and is growing all the time, adding new events and groups and classes. That is currently also our main homepage, scriptcamp.net, which you can go to sign up for membership, which includes access to all of the other camps as well, all the other servers, all the other skills, including Word Camp, focused on novel writing, Toon Camp, focused on animation. We have Code Camp, focused on coding, which just started new coding classes too, Film Camp for filmmaking, and many others. About me personally, if you don't know already, I run Script Camp and Word Camp, but occasionally appear in other events on the servers. I have been a working screenwriter since 2017. I've written for things like Shudder, AMC's Creepshow, and I teach the boot camps in Weekly Writers Lab. Most recently, I'm mostly a feature writer, so my last project was a action script that I just set up in London within the past few months. I also write novels and teach the novel classes from 12 to 2 every Saturday on WordCamp. Okay, so here we are with the upcoming schedule. This starts next week, so if you're interested in looking ahead at what's coming in the TV bootcamp, we run for 6 weeks with the additional week 0 and then the sort of week following the final class, so it's really kind of more like 8 weeks altogether. But we go step by step through planning and plotting, and figuring out every step of your story before you start writing pages. You're going to get that screenwriting software about halfway through the course, and that's when you'll actually start writing those pages. So we're going to begin with writing Thing of the Week, procedurals, this time. And since it fell on another Friday the 13th, we just love when that happens, so we're going to kind of focus on Monster of the Week as kind of like our main idea or theme for that class. But Thing of the Week procedurals are going to include everything from Crime of the Week, a medical case of the week, a legal case of the week, a supervillain of the week, or just any other kind of a problem that is dealt with by your characters in their workplace or profession with a sense of procedure or a sense of, this is how we always go about solving this sort of problem. So that's going to be a brand new class, December 13th. And that's going to kick off our new session of TV Bootcamp. And it's going to take you all the way through idea to finished draft of a brand new original pilot. Although we are talking today about writing spec episodes, which are not exactly original pilots, pretty far from it, actually. We will, in the courses, be focused more on writing original material. So a brand new a brand new pilot or a brand new feature script in 6 weeks for TV and 8 weeks for the feature. Or a brand new novel, if you want, and that's on WordCamp. So here's everything that's coming up. Remember, you don't really need to download screenwriting software until halfway through the course if you haven't done so already. Our recommendations are usually for that going to be Arc Studio or Writer Duet, which both have great free versions that you can download. And ultimately, that draft of that script will be finished by January 31st. So, end of next month, you will have a complete pilot if you follow along with the steps and milestones of our course. We're going to look at something a little different today, though. This is kind of a highly requested topic, but not one that is touched on all that much because it has limited appeal and application. There's not that many things that you can do with these, but there is still a really careful art to writing spec episodes. Mostly what we're talking about are pilots, or sometimes called original pilots, or occasionally even confusingly called spec pilots. Let me just really quickly run down the difference of... I'll come back to the overview in just a moment, but just before we go any further, I want to just look at really quickly what is a spec and why do we write one. So spec refers to several unrelated things in screenwriting, which is very odd and confusing. So I know it's dumb, but try to wrap your head around this as best you can. So spec stands for speculative, and it refers to, in features, a feature script that you've written on your own, not commissioned or paid by anyone, and with the intent of either selling it or using it to fill out your portfolio as a writing sample. In terms of TV shows, a spec episode refers to like an almost fan fiction type episode of an existing show that is written by a writer that is not part of that staff, and is written for the express purpose of showcasing your work in the specific style and voice of another showrunner, of someone else besides yourself. and it's used as a portfolio piece to get meetings and showcase your style. It is also used to enter contests and fellowships, which will look at the main fellowships that accept and are looking for different types of specs today. But you will not write this with the expectation of getting your script on that show. You will not write this with the expectation of writing for that show. Often, in fact, showrunners aren't reading specs for their show. They're reading specs in a similar genre or story world so they can get a sense of what that writer's voice and experience is like without having it sort of polluted by its connection to their own show. So you're not writing this for those express reasons. You are writing this only for the purpose of entering a fellowship or contest, or of practicing and having fun. You can do it for that reason too if you want to. Or you can approach this from the perspective of building out my portfolio with something that somebody probably won't ask for. They might. Some showrunners even nowadays say, hey, no, I actually do like specs. I miss them. What happened to those? Like, I used to read those all the time. Here's even some modern writing producers on shows who are talking about specs that they wrote or specs that they like to read or things like that. Not that many people ask for them nowadays. Most of the time, original pilots have completely supplanted this, and you could go your whole career as a TV writer never writing one of these and you'd be okay. But on the other hand, once you get staffed on a show, you're going to have to apply these skills of writing using somebody else's voice and trying to fit into the overall larger picture of a story that you're connected to, but that you're not ultimately steering the ship on. And there are just certain skills that you kind of have to build up through something in the image in the chat just gobsmacked me into silence for a moment. Somebody shared an image of Godzilla and seemingly his pregnant husband. I have no idea what's going on there. That just threw me way off. Anyway, so spec episodes, you can see exactly what the point is. There's not as many reasons to write them. There are some limited reasons, and overall they're a lot of fun and they're good practice. So there's if this appeals to you, if there's some show that you would just love to be a part of, or you're bursting with ideas for where it could go, then give it a shot. There's no harm that could come from writing this, besides unless you approach it with this idea of, I'm writing this so that I can become a staff member on that show. Just usually not how it works. I also see a comment in the chat. Thank you, Monica. Yes, in the 80s and 90s, sometimes shows would consider spec episodes by prospective writers. For instance, on Next Generation, which occasionally did produce an episode like this, and there were certain other shows, usually in that kind of very status quo anthological format, that did look at spec episodes that they were sent. That does not, as far as I know, happen anymore. Okay, so here's our overview for today. What is a spec? Why write one? We kind of just went into that. We're going to look at the aspects of writing a spec, from mining the unexplored depths, which is kind of the key idea in figuring out what story do I want to tell within the world that someone else has created. We will look at the fellowships and contests that actually do accept specs nowadays. Now that I think of it, I don't think I included the contests. There's a bunch of contests. They're mostly on the kind of lower end things like Scriptapalooza or stuff like this, that even if you win, the benefits of you winning those are not that high. So I recommend against entering anything besides the kind of 5 or 6 major fellowships and contests. I even have friends that have won certain other contest, lower tier contests, and they get ghosted by the people that run it, or they don't get the prize, or nothing happens, or in any case, diminishing returns, or you will quickly have a sense of diminishing returns when you start to explore in terms of contests beyond just the top ones, so be careful there. Anyway.
Maybe we should have one. Maybe we should have a skill camp contest.
We've done various contests. We've done a horror contest in the past. We like the idea. We will have more in the future for sure.
I mean, this kind of contest.
Oh, well, that's a little different because these are massive contests that have thousands of submissions and usually have high entry fees of up to $100 plus, which would not probably be the scale of contest that we would run here at Script Camp.
Just for campers. Just for school campers.
Yeah, we will explore running more contests in the future of various kinds. Definitely.
Okay.
So what else? So we're looking at... we'll look at the full list of Nickelodeon accepted shows as well. Some good choices and bad choices for specs and why. Structure, engine, and finding a story within someone else's story world. Matching voice. Fitting into an overall vision. And then towards the end, we'll have time for both questions and pitches if you have an idea, a great idea for a spec episode, and it's in the universe of a show that I kind of know, or maybe it stands completely on its own and I don't have to know it. You could pitch that. I'll have a slide on digging deeper into that so you can get ready and have that, try to be working on that through the class and have something to present towards the end. It's okay if no one feels ready to do that by the end of this course, but that's okay. Anyway, so that's our overview for what we're doing today. We're going to start with the topic of mining the unexplored depths. Let me just double check everyone fully understands the distinction of what spec means in these different contexts before I go any further, just because that's so key to what we're doing. Any questions on that? Okay, if there's no questions there, we will jump right into mining the depths. What am I talking about? So, I want you to just think of some of your favorite shows, ideally ones that are on the air currently. It's in the world of writing specs, we're, for the most part, writing things that are currently airing episodes. Which characters do you like but have never gotten a full or proper storyline? Who's a pair-up of characters that would be interesting or funny to see together? What plot elements haven't been explored or explored enough, in your opinion? In what ways could the writer deepen the world of that show and highlight some new conflict, mystery, or other plot goodies that haven't been brought to the forefront yet? What would simply be something awesome that you'd love to see? Something you've been waiting for or hoping to see? A question that you've been dying for the answer to? Think for a second and then feel free to speak up if you have the answer to one of these things here. Tell us about one of your favorite shows and your ideas for it.
Well, if it's a monster, I happen to love Swamp Thing.
Okay, is that currently on the air?
No, it was on the CW. It's off the air, unfortunately.
Okay, try if you can, try hard to think of something currently airing.
Oh, okay, sorry.
All good.
So Red Dwarf is currently airing. It's been on the air for like 40 years off and on. The original premise was like trying to get back to Earth after being trapped in 3 million years in deep space. I think it would be interesting to see what would happen if they actually made it to Earth 3 million years in the future. Like, what would that even look like?
I love that. There's a certain challenge to writing a premise that is not normally the premise of the show, but it can really work. Like for instance, think if you were writing a spec of Gilligan's Island, would you write an episode where they actually get rescued? Maybe that could be cool. Maybe you could find some way to like show what that formula looks like when they leave the confines of their original location. That can really stand out in a way. But it runs the risk, if you aren't careful, of breaking the format and it doesn't feel like the show at all anymore. So you do have to strike that balance there. Anything else you want to tell us about your ideas for Red Dwarf? Like, is there a pair-up of characters that you haven't seen together before? Or some plot element that hasn't been brought to the surface?
Oh, they've explored a lot. Yeah, I can't think of a pair-up that hasn't been done on that show.
That can be a problem when the show's been on for 30, 40 years. This is sort of a joke in the world of The Simpsons, where the South Park writers would always joke, well, The Simpsons did it, we can't do that. They already did it. There was a bit on the old Harmontown podcast where they were sort of joking that, just imagine being in The Simpsons writer's room. Somebody's like, what if Bart, and then the showrunner's like, what if Bart what? Goes to space, grows up, dies, we've done it. We've done everything. What if Bart what? I just thought that was a funny way of expressing this idea that if it's on long enough, they've probably thought of something like that. It's okay if you don't know the show by heart, and if it has hundreds of episodes, like, it's probably okay if your plot is sort of like something that's been done before, but if it's too similar, then you have to imagine the person that's reading knows the show, and if they're like, they did this already, then it's going to feel like you kind of wasted your spec a little bit. So I would try at least to, as best you can, pick an area that hasn't been fully explored yet, or maybe piggyback off something that has been explored, and maybe take it in a slightly different direction, or make a different character at the center of it, or something. Thank you for weighing in. Anybody else want to say some show that you really like, and some character pair-up that you think would be interesting, some aspect of the show that hasn't been delved that deeply into yet?
Well, I just posted two that are on the air that I like. or Ghost, and George and Mandy's First Marriage. That's a spinoff from Young Sheldon, which is a spinoff from The Big Bang Theory.
Wow. Okay, great. So, what do you want to explore? What do you think what's some unexplored aspects of those shows?
Well, maybe a mashup of the two, where George and Mandy go to the manor where the ghosts are, and maybe somehow the ghost of Isaac Newton shows up, and maybe Sheldon shows up somehow, and he gets to interact with the ghost of Isaac Newton through the medium of Sam. She's the one that can see ghosts, and George and Mandy with their, which is Sheldon's brother and his sister-in-law. Maybe somehow, maybe one of them is now able to see ghosts. Probably Georgie. Maybe Georgie is now able to see ghosts. Somehow, I don't know, but it'd be an interesting mashup.
Okay, that's so. When we're mining unexplored depths, we're usually talking about digging deeper into stuff that's already there. What you're suggesting is a crossover between the two shows, with two unrelated shows, which is it could maybe work. There are certain kind of like stunt versions of these things. A stunt is when you basically just do a really crazy premise that seems totally out of the box and would absolutely never get made, but you sort of just do it to show off and to like get attention. So like picking a crossover between two unrelated shows, in the world of writing specs, I could perhaps see a path through it. I will say normally that's not what you want to do though. In most cases you want to, that's why we're saying the unexplored depths of the things that are already there, because you're trying to show that you can dig deeper and that you can find additional untold stories within a world that has had stories in it told already. But in certain circumstances, I could maybe see the crossover working out.
Well, okay, in George and Mandy's First Marriage, you find that that Georgie is a natural businessman. He's the equivalent of Sheldon, only in terms of business. Where Sheldon's very intellectual and he becomes an astrophysicist and wins the Nobel Prize. You see that Georgie is just as successful as a businessman. So maybe he in the story, currently you see that Georgie is working for his father-in-law, and eventually he's going to open up a very successful tire business. Well, maybe maybe he invents something, just kind of out of his creative mind, and maybe it begins to launch he and his wife Mandy and their little daughter into becoming successful. Because I think he becomes successful like in his 50s or maybe his 40s, but maybe it launches him earlier into success, and then maybe you have the tension of his wife trying to be going back to be a weather forecaster, and maybe have some of that. So that would be a little bit of unexplored depth of that show.
Okay, yeah, I don't know it personally, so it's a little. I can't weigh in specifically too much on that one, but it sounds like you have some good ideas for exploring the characters' work lives from different angles.
Yeah. For Ghost, I mean, they're doing lots of different stuff. They're focusing a lot on the interpersonal politics between the different ghosts, and their relationship to Sam, who's able to see them, and I like that a lot. But her husband cannot see ghosts, and they run this bed and breakfast at this giant manor that she's inherited. So maybe he could begin to see ghosts. He's a cook, so I don't know. I don't know what you could cook that would make you see ghosts, but maybe somehow somebody has not cursed but blessed some food, and now her husband can see ghosts too.
He would he eats a ghost pepper, obviously, right? Isn't that?
Oh yes, of course, a ghost pepper. Of course. Yes, exactly. I don't know why I see it. It was right in front of me.
Yeah. That could be pretty funny.
Okay, so he creates a vegetarian dinner for some guests, and he made stuffed ghost peppers and salad with ghost pepper dressing, and now suddenly he can see ghosts too.
Perfect. And his mouth hurts from the.
And his mouth hurts. Maybe in order to see the ghost, he has to eat a ghost pepper.
That's a funny plot idea. That could work.
Okay.
So I have like a thing. I'm not sure if you guys heard of the Day of the Jackal, but in that show there's a gunsmith that is very fantastic with guns. He created like a collapsible sniper gun that has 2 barrels, so it can be 30 inches. It's like the holy grail of like sniper rifles. So I was thinking of like if we just go into that guy gunsmith story and we do a Breaking Bad thing instead of a chemistry guy, he could be a material science physics professor kind of thing, and he broke bad. It doesn't have to be cancer. I don't, but like that gunsmith thing, right? And because it's physics, you can like really go weird with the inventions, right? He would have like assassins going for his thing, like contractors saying, "Oh, can you build me this bomb?" And then like the end of the season is that he's forced to like build a nuclear bomb or something. That would be kind of interesting.
Okay, elevating a side character to be explored in more depth. A gun dealer is always a cool sort of archetype.
Are you going to put it in the original setting of, I want to say the 70s or maybe the 60s? Because that was quite an old film.
Are we not talking about shows that are currently on the air?
You were talking about Day of the Jackal, which I thought was a very old, well, not very old, was a relatively old film.
Old film? Wait, are we talking about we're talking TV shows, right, Mario?
Yeah. So they did a Day of the Jackal, the TV series.
Oh, for some reason we've lost your audio. You have been kind of muffled out, but I think you're saying there's a TV show based on the film. Maybe try a different mic or reset your mic or something like that. IB, did you have an idea?
I had a silly idea.
Good.
And it was doing... go ahead, Mario.
So the Day of the Jackal, can you hear me? So it's Day of the Jackal is a current TV show. Now BBC America. They redid it as a TV series, and it's like fantastic.
I see. Okay, thank you for that. So there's a currently airing adaptation of that movie. It sounds like.
Yeah, and it's gunsmith. He actually makes the guns for the main character.
Oh, he makes them from scratch. Cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Go ahead, IB.
Yeah. So I was thinking, a murder, doing the Great British Bake Off, but have a murder mystery, and you air it like a regular show, but you don't tell everyone that it's actually, this is like an April Fool's episode, and they do it like a murder mystery kind of thing. So you've got like, you have to set it up like the reality TV show, but actually it's, they say it's a murder mystery episode.
Wait, I'm sorry, you're suggesting a script, isn't Great British Bake Off an actual baking show? That's not a scripted show, right?
It is an actual baking show, but I just thought it would be funny to have one episode in it where you do script it, and it's like a murder mystery, just for like an April Fool's thing.
Oh, okay. I could maybe see this as a stunt spec, but given that Great British Bake Off is not normally a scripted show, it's not really normally an option for you to write a spec of. Like most fellowships and contests that accept them, they have a list of shows that you can pick from. And they wouldn't include an unscripted one. But it's a funny idea. Maybe it could work as a stunt.
I thought that was the thing with they just said, oh, write a spec script and it doesn't really matter where it's from as long as it's current.
It does matter. Let's take a look.
Okay.
So that's a good segue, so we'll just transition from there. So as far as I'm aware, there are only 2 major fellowships that accept TV specs nowadays. I could be wrong. Somebody else please link if there's another one. Nickelodeon Writing Program, which I have the list of shows on the next page, and we have Paramount Writers Mentoring Program. Here's their rules. Spec scripts should be half an hour or hour episode based on a primetime drama or comedy series. So British Bake Off would not be a primetime drama or comedy series, which was aired or released in the 23 to 24 season, which was broadcast on a network, cable, or streamer. So Warner Brothers, often people think that they accept them. They no longer do. As of, I think, last year, they completely have banned them now. They don't take them anymore. Let's look at the list of Nickelodeon shows. So Nickelodeon is skewing towards comedy, as you can see, and has a lot of animated options on here, including a couple things, interestingly, that I don't think are on the air. Futurama is on the list, though. Has that been brought back again? Tell me if so, but I'm pretty sure it's not. So in any case, sometimes you'll see a wild card on the list of accepted shows. But we're starting with Abbott Elementary, which is on the verge of becoming oversaturated, but is still kind of like just right. If you're writing comedy specs, chances are you already have one of these. We also have Adventure Time with Fiona and Cake, which is like the new incarnation of Adventure Time on HBO Max. That is a great pick. Animal Control, which I'm not going to go through all these shows because I don't know every single one, but that's like a network style sitcom, or like a straight up network sitcom with Joel McHale. You can see a bunch more on here, including some older ones like Bob's Burgers. But most of them are going to be newer shows within seasons like 1 through 4. So how do we pick a show? Yeah, let's do how to pick a show, then I'm going to go back a little bit and just... well, actually, let me take a quick step back. So here's what I'll say. Just a moment ago, we were touching on mining the unexplored depths. And before we go further... Sorry, I'm going back and forth. But before we go any further, I want you all to be using those ideas that you had just a moment ago, or perhaps thinking of new ideas along those lines, as to characters that you haven't seen at the center of an episode yet, or an interesting pair-up of characters, or some aspect of the show, some plotline, or some question that hasn't really been resolved, or that you have an interesting take on, or some cool avenue for the characters to go down, or some just some cool ideas for existing shows. And then towards the end, you're going to be able to pitch those out loud and extemporaneously in a kind of brainstorming way. It doesn't have to be perfect or practiced or anything like this, but you'll just be sharing ideas and just getting your gears turning to be thinking along, the lines of writing a spec. And then we'll discuss and pitch at the end. And if you can't think of one, then I'm going to throw a Simpson character matchups at you to pitch storylines for.
Okay, so what format do you want this in? Do we just talk about it, or do we write it down?
You can write stuff down if it helps you, but just be thinking about it, I would say. You can write on your own paper, but just be ready to speak. Okay, so be thinking of that. In the meantime, let's move forward into how to choose a show. So we just saw everything that Nick is choosing from this year, but this will be different next year, so if you're watching this now, it will be in the future from right now, and also this list will have changed, so you have to check the current list. How do we pick one? Good picks and bad picks. So conventional wisdom used to be, back when these were written more, that the ideal show is in its second or third season, is critically and popularly pretty well liked, and is gaining popularity, but is like almost at its peak. It's not quite at its peak, it's just sort of finding its footing, and it's becoming popular. So in its second or third season, like a well-regarded show in its third season is basically the perfect show to spec. That puts you in that great valley of the show not being oversaturated and having enough fans to ensure that you get a decent reader, and that the characters and voice of the show will still feel fresh in people's minds, and they haven't explored everything yet. So there's a lot of untrodden snow for you to walk through. Abbott Elementary, like I mentioned, is in that spot now, but in a year or two it will be oversaturated. Alternately, you could pick an old favorite like something like South Park or Law & Order that still airs episodes, or Doctor Who. Things like this, which are useful in the sense that many of them don't really go off the air, or they come back eternally in some form or the other. And everyone knows the voice of it, so it's easy to get a reader who knows it, but it means that you have to go the extra mile and really nail those and do an amazing job, because small mistakes will sort of be held against you to a greater degree. It used to be, I've heard this wisdom shared by a TV writer in the past, that to write a Simpsons spec is like singing Defying Gravity at a musical theater audition, and it's sort of like saying, this is like a high-level song that I'm picking because I am telling you that I'm able to perform it at this very high level. So by picking Simpsons, you have to like really nail it, or something that's been on for a long time. You have to like know it super, super well, and imagine that your readers they know the show like by heart, and that they've seen a bunch before, and that you have to do a fantastic job. If you do anything less than that, then it will seem like a waste of time. And it's very easy to get thrown off in those really well-known shows. So you have to pick your battles there, pick whatever is most interesting and exciting to you, but just keep in mind that distinction and that difference. Let's look at some good picks and bad picks in drama and comedy. Okay, so we're starting with good picks in drama. And drama, as you can see here, so most contests and fellowships and things that accept specs, they're really broadly looking at comedy or drama. I know those are like not very nuanced categories, sort of just looking at, is it a comedy or isn't it? But at the end of the day, you can choose within a niche much more carefully if you want to. If you see yourself as a sci-fi fantasy writer, then you're writing things like Arcane or House of the Dragon, or Severance. If you see yourself as more of a crime writer, you're probably writing episodes of Mayor of Kingstown, or things like this, right? So you can angle your portfolio towards whatever the kind of stuff is that you want to make, but you should just understand that generally hour-long drama versus half-hour comedy is like the distinction that, or the delineation that most people make when it comes to specs. So here's some good picks. Basically anything on Apple or HBO is a pretty good choice, especially because they don't tend to get bad ratings, they tend to be popular and critically well-liked, and they don't run on and on for many, 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 many years, so you know it's probably going to be in its second or third season. But occasionally, I didn't include a couple on here that are probably not great picks. Things like Pachinko or Shogun are like so culturally specific that I would say unless you come from those cultures, probably don't try, because it'll just like small mistakes will stand out so much more. And then there's often this question in TV that's asking, why do you feel like you're the one to tell this story? And if you don't have a great answer for that, then you're usually better off just staying away from it. So I would not, even though those are good shows that match the criteria in other ways, I would say for really culturally specific stuff, don't pick that unless you're absolutely sure. Don't pick it just because it's a good show and you like it. So what else do we have? HBO shows, House of the Dragon, Industry, and that's all of them on here, right? Yeah. The other big HBO show right now is Last of Us. I don't think that's a great pick because that has such a concrete and well-established storyline and has another season coming out, which we don't know how they're going to take that very well-established storyline, and for you to put your own direction to it would maybe seem sort of counterproductive, though you could perhaps take the idea of writing about a side character in this world or something like this. Looks like we have someone joining us on Twitch. Diem says, yo, I'm also a writer. Hi, Diem. Thanks for joining. You can come join us on Discord, too, if you want. You can go to scriptcamp.net and get the link to join our live and interactive classes, scriptcamp.net. And you can join this one and many other activities that we have on the server. We'd be glad to have you. Okay, what else? So The Bear. This is also going to be oversaturated within a couple years, but right now it's right in the sweet spot, and like it's hyper popular. It is half an hour. I think they're half-hour episodes or slightly longer, which means that it's less pages to write, so it's a little more manageable just in terms of the size of the project. And people love it. So I mean, everybody wants to like read these right now before they're sick of them. And it's like a pretty uncomplicated premise for a show, which means that a lot of writers will be drawn to this. But it's dramatically complicated just in terms of the plot. It's pretty simple. Anyway, if you think you can nail it, and a lot of people have worked in restaurants, so a lot of people think they can, then go for it. Industry, I've never seen, but pretty much what I get from it is it's like Succession, you know? So if you really wanted to write your Succession spec, but now it's off, so you can't, well, you have this one. Check it out. I don't know. I can't help you there. Severance is probably my favorite show currently in the current season going on, or it airs new episodes next month. It took forever. So you have high excitement and high anticipation around the show, a really rich story world, and a place to show off your awesome ideas for things that can be done with the central speculative elements. And also, not much has been done, so there's plenty of room for you to explore or even make bold choices and see where you want to take it. I wouldn't, with a mystery box show, I wouldn't actually break open too many boxes and unveil too many mysteries that the show itself will probably get to. But again, if you explore another character in that world, or maybe just take us into some other aspect of Lumen or some other wing we haven't seen before, or something like that, I could see a lot of really great opportunities for Severance specs. And this won't be oversaturated for a couple of years, so it's just in the best spot right now. Arcane is a similar spot because that came out years ago and is not oversaturated. There's only so many episodes of it, not that many. And it's a very rich, very wide world. The challenge there would almost be limiting yourself and reconnecting it to the things that we know of from the show and avoiding this temptation to show off all your knowledge of the video game world and trying to boldly expand it in too many new directions. That's kind of what's so great about the show, is how focused it is, despite the fact that it takes place in such a vast, complicated world. Interview with the Vampire, I haven't seen yet, but is on AMC, going into its second or maybe even third season, and this has that high name recognition. It's just a fun one to pick. I think a lot of people like reading shows like this, and there's not as many on as there used to be. There was a big glut of these, vampire, supernatural, paranormal type shows everything from True Blood to Vampire Diaries. There were like a million of them for a while, but now that they've subsided somewhat, this was probably a good choice again. I think they've come back around. The morning show I've never seen, and in fact, it sounds to me like an unscripted show, but apparently this is a well-regarded drama in its second or third season on Apple TV. Silo is going into finishing season 2 right now, and has a book series that it's based on, so you can perhaps be inspired by certain characters in that. There's a lot of characters in the show to perhaps focus on. Mayor of Kingstown is on Paramount Plus, I think, so it's not one that not as many people have seen, but in the sort of adult prestige crime space, it's one of the better picks out there now and is going into its third season. Yellow Jackets is one of Hollywood's favorite shows on right now. I still have only seen the pilot. I absolutely loved it and see why it's caught people's excitement and attention, because it has this great, really hooky central mystery box to it, and also just like a lot of potential for thrills and chills, and the dual timeline structure is really complicated, so if you think you can pull that off, then that would make a great spec choice as well. Okay, so there's good picks for drama. I will look at Oversaturated, and then I will ask you guys, what do you think are some good picks, or I guess maybe you might not know stuff that's oversaturated, but what do you think would be some good choices for drama? What would you love to write an episode of, and why? Let's look at Oversaturated first, though. So Grey's Anatomy, this has been on for 20 years, and you got to imagine. And so I would say when it comes to procedurals like this or Blue Bloods, that's why I included 2 on here. If all you want to write is CBS-style procedurals, then you should probably have one of these. But if not, then I wouldn't pick one of these to stand out and to blow people's minds or to get attention unless you have some incredibly weird idea for it. So generally, probably stay away from procedurals unless you exclusively see yourself as a procedural writer. Stranger Things and The Boys are just some of the biggest shows in the entire world. They're going into season 4 and beyond. If a show starts going into spin-offs, it's probably oversaturated, so I would stay away from those 2. Okay, what do you guys think? What are some good picks for drama shows to spec? What would you love to write an episode of, and why?
Out of the ones that you showed, I would pick Interview with the Vampire. Anne Rice is enjoyable, and there is lots of world building that has already been done for the showrunners to just explore. I think that would be an easy show to sort of come up with something that hasn't been written yet for.
Yeah, it's got a nice, rich, specific setting and culture to it as well, which it's kind of sets it apart, makes it feel unique.
Yeah, you can throw in some real history.
Yeah, explore some other part of the country if you wanted to. Like, they don't have to stay in the central location of the show for your episode. It should probably have some scenes there, but you're free to branch out and find some other thing for them to do. Have they done a Steamboat episode yet? I mean, don't we love a Steamboat?
I'm not sure. I mean, they could go to the Caribbean. They could explore all kinds of things. I'm not sure when what time period the show actually takes place in.
Oh, I think it's 1920s.
1920s?
I think so.
Okay. Caribbean would be a little less interesting than when it started in the book, but anyway.
Yep, lots of options there. Thank you for weighing in. Somebody else want to tell us what's a show you'd love to write? What do you think is a good pick? It doesn't have to be one of these. It could be something I missed.
Well, it's not on the air. Does it have to be on the air?
Yeah, it's got to be on the air.
Okay. Well, it's showing on Netflix, but it's not. It's in like syndication.
Okay, you can tell us if it's just something you'd love to write, and maybe tell us why.
Stranger Things, because I like that kind of stuff, and yeah, okay, I like it, but I would like to write for that or Interview for the Vampire. I don't know any of these. I haven't seen them.
Okay, Stranger Things is still going, by the way. It has 1 season left to go.
Okay, so I guess it would qualify. Anyway, I'd like to write an episode for Stranger Things. I'd like for I don't know. I'd like for somehow for 11 to grow in her powers, but other people to develop some of these powers too, and for the the up well, the upside down has already come back into the world, but then it was pushed back. I'd really like to see the upside down come more into the current world, but it be kind of stealthy where you don't really notice that it's the upside down. So and then 11 and the core cast, they have to do something to like save the entire country or save the world.
Okay. Yep, lots of options there, lots of possibilities. It is oversaturated, but doesn't mean you can't do it. Just means that you have to be aware that readers have seen a lot of different stuff before, so you got to make yours stand out.
Well, go ahead.
After you.
Well, yeah, I think I am kind of being aware of it because I know that the upside down has come into the real world, and but it's been pushed back. But it'd be interesting to see the upside down break into reality, and but it not be well understood, just as it wasn't well understood in the first episode, and so yeah, I mean, I don't really understand why it's oversaturated unless you mean it's just so popular that so many people have written spec scripts to try and get on it, if that's what you mean.
Yes, basically that.
Okay. I don't know if my idea is the most unique and creative, but as a fan of I'd enjoy seeing it. And maybe some of the people who have powers like 11, maybe they begin to develop powers too.
That could be cool. Thank you for sharing that. IB, did you have an idea? Go ahead.
I was going maybe the Sandman, because I feel like that's got a wide range of things that you can do with it, because it's got all of the comic book lore behind it. It's still technically on the air.
No, it's doomed. It's so doomed. I would not pick it. I know people love it, but the Neil Gaiman stuff has just blown it up, and there's no room there. I wouldn't do it, but if you already have one lying around, maybe you could get people to read it. I just wouldn't pick it because it's not going to be on the air next year by far.
Okay. Because yeah. Okay.
I know it sucks. No, it's a great thought. Like, I'm sure that there's a million things you like. That's why it sucks that it's probably going to get canceled, because there's a lot of books and they're some of the most well regarded in all of fantasy, and you could go a million directions with it. But I don't think it would be a good pick for a portfolio.
Yeah, well, I think the issue these days is there are so many shows that get cancelled after like 1 or 2 seasons, and so it's difficult finding one that's like, oh, this is a current show. And if it is a current show, it's usually because it's over saturated. It's like one of those things that they say, oh, we're putting everything on this one. So
right.
Yeah,
it's hard. Not easy to find a great show to spec. Okay, let's keep going. So good picks for comedy. So again, we're looking at shows in their second or third year, maybe going on almost on fourth. I think Harley Quinn is going towards fourth. Is like moving towards fourth. And the options I have here are Mythic Quest, which is on Apple TV and is a really, really popular show in LA. I don't know if it's that popular outside of LA, but readers here definitely know it. And it is in the sort of world of prestige comedy, whatever that means. Reservation Dogs is a similar thing, where if you have like a kind of elevated soft comedy, then usually these will be in a world where you can show off your voice a little bit more and show that it's like where you can show off a bit. But you have to ask yourself, I guess, also when picking your show, do you see yourself as a hard comedy writer? Because if so, then you're going to want to pick more of a network-style show that has jokes, or maybe like even a live studio audience, that kind of multi-cam hard comedy show. You have to pick the sort of thing that you want to write on and the sort of thing that you watch. So I can't really give you much in terms of the multi-cam world. I don't really watch those as much, like network shows. But in, Abbott Elementary is a network show. People absolutely love it. It's not multicam, obviously. But that's why I think this is the most popular comedy show to spec now, and as of next year, it will be overdone. Ghosts, we mentioned earlier, and is also on the list. I think that is a very fun one based on a British show. So it's actually been on for, I think, five-ish years in one of its incarnations, and it's big enough that it keeps getting renewed. To me, this has kind of taken the spot of The Good Place, which was oversaturated towards the end, but definitely made for a great spec for a long time. We have Fiona and Cake, which I mentioned, if you like writing in the world of animated kind of craziness. And then also Harley Quinn, if you think that you can draw from the world of stock characters from an existing universe and do a lot of interesting stuff with them. Maybe you have a lot of, if you want to write on comic book type shows and you have a lot of fun concepts for, I don't know, what if we had an episode where, Bane and Raven team up? Or what if there's an episode where Harley Quinn and Batman have a baby? Or just like really wacky, bizarre kind of what if type scenarios. It's a show that has that kind of madcap kind of energy to it, which would totally behoove you just picking a crazy premise.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
Would writing spec scripts for animation stuff make more sense than writing original animation stuff if you were wanting to go into more the animation side of things? Because lots of people said that people don't accept original animations because they usually do that all in-house. So
They're
it'd be
not
more like
well, go ahead.
So what I was saying, is it more like, do you more want to show yourself to be someone that should be hired to be in-house rather than going for something new? That was
Well, you're never writing you're never even writing original pilots with the expectation that you will make those shows. That should never be your goal going into it. You're writing those pilots for the same reason you're writing spec episodes, to get meetings, to showcase your voice, and to build the skills that you need to actually be a good member of a staff. So if you want to write for animated shows, you should be writing original animated pilots probably, because you'll get more opportunities to use those. But it doesn't make, I think the premise of your question was just a little bit off, because we're never writing pilots thinking, I'm trying to get this thing made, whether it's live action or otherwise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for that question. I see a suggestion in the chat. Smiling Friends. Oh yeah, that's actually a great pick. That's sort of like gaining in popularity, but is not at the Rick and Morty level of saturation, which is let's obviously, you can take a look at my oversaturated comedy picks. Anyone else have? I'm looking in the chat. Let me just see if Megan picked Chaos. Yeah, that's a newer one on Netflix. Not that many people know it, but if that one gets more seasons, I would think about it. Yeah, for sure.
I think in Chaos.
The cleaning lady is pretty good.
Cleaning lady. What network is that on?
In case you guys don't know what the cleaning lady is, it's basically a transplant from like kind of a telenovela style of a cleaning lady becoming the kingpin of a kind of a drug empire. You know,
Oh.
She's actually a doctor, but she has to move to America for the medical expertise, and so even though she has a doctor's degree, she has to work as a cleaning lady. But because of her doctor skills, she's kind of becomes indispensable to the criminal syndicate in America. It's kind of like Breaking Bad almost. It's really, really good, but really, really campy because it's network.
And what network is that on?
Fox.
Fox. Okay, got it. So, yeah, if that gets more seasons, like if that's especially going into a third season, then sounds like it would be a good pick.
Like fourth.
Oh,
it's in the fourth season now.
Great. So that would be a good pick. Yeah, definitely.
So I have a legitimate question, because I was bringing this up in chat. I was mentioning for the Nickelodeon Fellowship, I was interested in doing Star Trek Lower Decks, and I feel like is there like, when you're dealing with a show with continuity, especially something as vast as Star Trek, how do you find that to be something you would avoid? I mean, I feel like it's on its last season now, so it might be dead on arrival at this point. But in terms of like comparing a show like Bob's Burgers compared to something that's more has more continuity, and is that something you would avoid as opposed to something that you could have more status quo as king?
It's a great question, and I actually have a whole slide on it later. Here it is. I will just give you a preview, and then we'll get more into it a couple slides down the line. But basically, you need to write something that stands on its own. You should not write something that relies on the continuity that has come before it necessarily, or that feels like it will drastically alter the direction of the continuity after it, which is why you're sort of incentivized to pick like a side character or something like that, and like explore a story that would not like get in the way of the central continuity. So that's my suggestion there. You are correct that there are definitely more benefits to picking something that has that sort of eternal status quo quality to it. We will get more into that soon.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so overspect in comedy. Always Sunny in Philadelphia is probably the most saturated comedy show in terms of spec writing. This is the thing that like pretty much every single comedy writer has a spec of this. I would just not do it. Not that it's a bad show, it's a great show, but it's been on for, 12 years more? 10 years? 11 years? 13? I don't even know. Something absurd like that. So you gotta imagine everything's been thought of, everything's been done. That central kind of gimmick of this trio, or this quartet of characters in the bar yelling at each other, it's just hard to make that really stand out at this point. Rick and Morty, similar thing. It's like, it's kind of evergreen because the episodes can go anywhere, and it's like the modern Futurama, basically. Like, you can pick a crazy scientific concept or even do a parody or something like this, so there's a lot of room there, but it's just so saturated. And this was just like writer's favorite show for a couple of years, and a lot of people still love it, and it's still big, but it's too big, and I would not attempt to draw from that well. Bob's Burgers, similar thing. It's just been on for so long, and also it's just I think you will always find loyal fans of it, but at the same time, everyone has read a bunch of these. What We Do in the Shadows, to me, is one of the newer sort of oversaturated shows that has just passed that tipping point. I think it's going towards season 5, which means that, again, this being really popular, the Taika style, the Taika-verse, as we might call it, is super popular here in Hollywood, so this is really, really, really big stuff, and just for similar reasons to the others here, I would consider not picking it. But I guess if you really want to, this would probably be the last year. Okay, what do you guys think? Any great picks in comedy that I missed out on? Anything you think would make a great spec for this upcoming season?
I mentioned the Decameron, but I don't know if it's getting a second season or not.
What was it called?
The Decameron?
The
Yeah, that is based on a book from the 11th century. So it's I don't know, it's pretty niche. It would be awesome to write, but I'm not sure if they've covered the entire book or not.
Yes,
in the 11th century. I know the show takes place in the 14th century.
Oh, 14th century. I'm sorry. 14th century. It's been a while since I looked it up, but I enjoyed it so much. I looked it up to find out what it was based on, and it was based on a book. So
I've never heard of that.
An Italian book, I believe.
And
right, because it's actually because the first part of it is Decca, actually, 10.
Okay, and what network is that on?
It's on Netflix.
Netflix. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're right. It is an Italian book. It was people consider it to be almost like the inspiration for the Canterbury Tales, because it came before.
Very cool.
I believe.
Hard to think that makes riveting television just from the sound of it, but I will take your word for it that it is just as good. The next slides that we're looking at are going to be more focused on structures. Does anyone have any last questions or ideas they want to share in terms of things that you think would make great picks for comedy? I see a suggestion that
that would be fun as hell to write. I'm sorry I interrupted, but that would be fun as hell to write. I agree.
Okay, thank you for that. I see a comment in the chat saying Bad News Bears 2000 series adaptation would be dope. Does that mean there is already a series adaptation of that, or just that a new series adaptation would be a good idea? You can let us know in the chat if you want. That's obviously out. If it does not already exist, obviously you could not do it as a spec episode. That would just be an original. Okay, if no one has any other suggestions, let's look briefly at structure. And then we're going to... Oh, you're saying a new one would be dope. Okay, so that would not be a spec episode. So, structure. Your choices are basically full hour or half hour. meaning 30 to 35 pages or 60 to 65 pages, more or less. There's some wiggle room there. Half hour is usually comedic. Doesn't always have to be. We think, but they're usually called half-hour comedy or full-hour drama. Or there's usually even less distinction than that made. Like, did you write a drama or did you write a comedy? If drama, click here for 60 pages. If comedy, click here for 30. That's what most of the, entering these on most sites will look like. They don't really distinguish that much. The only genre that isn't really out there is hour-long comedy. There's variations of pretty much everything else. If your show that you're speccing is like a 15-minute show or something like that, like an Adult Swim show, I would maybe consider writing a dual episode that goes to 30 pages, though you don't really have to. There's not really that many written rules for this, but in any case, try to just match the format of the show that you're in, which means that you're going to have to get some scripts for the show if you at all can. So, premise shows, they follow a very long story, and we need to watch the episodes in order to understand that story. Status quo shows, as I call them, there might be a more official name for them, but in any case, the continuity resets every week, and so, as we mentioned a moment ago, you're incentivized to pick a status quo show because it's just easier to read that and pick that up no matter when it is, even if it's years down the line, and you won't be confused because the show went a different direction than you assumed based on its current continuity. So in terms of time slot and format, here's just some different page counts. These are just the pilots, though, so the episodes of the show themselves might be a different page count, and some are double-spaced, like, what do we call them? Multicam shows are double-spaced. So those are the page counts are going to be way longer, so just make sure you're matching the format of your show as closely as you can. Okay, story engine. So once you have picked your show, you have to come up with an idea for the story of your show. So you have to understand what the engine is that already exists in the show. The engine, as we've talked about many times in our other classes, is this kind of amalgamation of several elements that will sum up to create conflict in the show and will sustain many episodes of this series, or has sustained many episodes of the series. It's much easier to point out the story engine of a show that already exists rather than one that you're building from scratch. Normally, this is going to be clear when you're writing from scratch in your series logline, but in any case, we should be able to look at the logline or trailer of an existing show and be able to pick out pretty much what is the engine here. Do the characters all have some goal in common? Do they all share a same workplace? What are their relationships like? Who's dating who? Who hates who? Who is working with who? Who's on whose side? All those different dynamics and all those different fuels for different types of conflict are going to be the parts of your engine that are going to work together and make the machine work and create many different stories over the years. So you have to understand what makes the story engine work, what has already been explored, and then what has not yet been done. You don't want to write an episode that feels... You want to write an episode that feels like the other episodes, but the plot doesn't feel like it's only mirroring the beats of previous episodes. You want to show... It's like, if we were to watch a new episode of the show today, what direction would you want to see it take? We're not just trying to play the hits. You can make inside jokes, and you can continue like running gags and things like that in your episode. Have fun with it. You can pretend that you're on the staff for the show, but it needs to stand on its own as much as you can, and you need to understand the engine pretty well. I still suggest starting with a logline, even for your episode. When inciting incident, an adjective A story protagonist must conflict before stakes. And that's going to help you set up the conflict. You don't have to write a series logline because the show already has, this series is already clear. It's just your episode that you're going to need to figure out what starts off the story, as in what is that first domino that is going to tip over and tip the rest, in the sequence of dominoes to create the chain of events of your story. And then you need to know which character you want to center as your A-story protagonist, which does not necessarily need to be the A-story protagonist of the main series. You can find your own sort of like point of focus for the spec, but if it's like a show with only one main character, then probably it's going to be about that A-story character. Must conflict before stakes. So what sets them off on their journey? What are the goalposts? And a sense of how we will measure that character's milestones of progress towards accomplishing those goals. Basically reads like a little movie logline. Okay, so we've talked so much about loglines in the other events on this channel that we might as well not even go too much into it. Let's go to this question that I said I would touch on before and give you like a preview of. So, find a strong C character. In finding your plot, this is an option for you. You don't have to do this, but I found this to be a really useful technique in writing specs. So, think of, like we had these questions earlier, which pairings of characters in a subplot have we seen and which ones haven't we seen yet? what could possibly lead to those characters teaming up or going head-to-head in a storyline together. Since the A-story characters will already most likely get the most screen time, not to mention the most plot ideas already kind of taken, you have an opportunity here to elevate a tertiary character and give them their own episode, or at least center the story on underused aspects of the narrative as they pertain to that character. You might think, who are some interesting C characters and why? What angles to their story can you explore, and what are the ways that they intersect with the, quote, more important characters? Can you fill in what they were doing during some time that they were missing? Or can you shine some interesting light on an aspect of the plotline that we may have missed out on, or that we saw from a different perspective before? I have Scruffy the janitor from Futurama here. I don't think he ever was the A-story character of an episode. I could be wrong. There's a lot of episodes of Futurama. But just be thinking, like, how can you... perhaps maybe this is fertile ground for you to elevate some minor character to the forefront and find a way to use what makes them fun, but also tie in what they're doing to your main cast so that we don't neglect the main cast. We want the main cast to sort of show up in interesting and unexpected ways. When I was writing Specs, and I've written 3 or 4 of these, I've written, when I was first starting out, in like 2012, I wrote an episode of Cougar Town that I think I was a quarterfinalist in something with. I wrote an episode of Wilfred, which I didn't get into anything with. I wrote an episode of Fargo, which was my favorite show for several years. And when I was writing Fargo, my plan with that was, there's no way I'm going to fit into the continuity of this because it just doesn't really make sense to. So instead, in this kind of anthology kind of way, I elevated the character of Tahir El-Kachif from the first season. If you remember, the Sudanese boy that Bill is fostering at his house, he only really has one really important scene, but I thought it'd be cool to see, what is he up to? What are some other criminal schemes that he's involved in? How could he kind of become the hero of this episode, but still interact with all the main cast? So we sort of get to see a different side of them. We get to build out an aspect of the plot that was only touched on, and we get to explore this character that we know so little about. I had more room to explore with him. So I think that's like just a fun way to take it. That's like, it may not always work for everything, but think about how you can bring, like, if you never have seen a plot line, that's a big part of being on a staff, is asking, what have we not done yet? So if you've never seen a plot line that revolves around something, try it out. Think of some ideas that could elevate that.
Well, I have a question. One, why do they call them C characters? And I tried to do that with what I submitted was the character that I wrote about is he's kind of a B character or C character. I'm not too sure.
So why are they called that? So because subplots are labeled in order of importance. So the main character is the A story, and then the second most important character, often the central relationship, love interest, something like that, they're going to take on the B story. And then your third plot line, which has less importance than those first two, is going to be called your C story. And so the less important characters usually are relegated to the C plot lines of episodes, whereas the most important characters take the A slot. So that's why it's called that. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a worse character, it just means that they have less screen time and they have less story importance.
Okay, got it. I was kind of thinking that it was that, but I also wondered if there may be some other, causation for that. But yeah, well, that's kind of what I tried to do with what I submitted in the chat.
Great. So if you submitted that for our segment that we mentioned, or where we pitch ideas, you might want to save it for the end because it'll get lost in all the other text. So just be ready to copy paste that again when we get to the last slides.
Okay.
All right. Any questions about this idea or just on what we've talked about so far? I see a question from Nacho. Is this for me or is this for someone else?
For you.
For me. Okay. Question is, for a serialized premise show, would you aim for first or second episode of a new imaginary season? Seems easier than fitting it into an existing season. I actually probably wouldn't, because the first episode of a new season comes packed with lots of promises of where the season's going to go. And usually the last moments, like the last scenes of the first episode of a new season, are going to focus on like those little teasers and those cliffhangers and saying, oh, and I bet you're going to wonder how this is going to play out next. And you're not going to be able to pay any of that off So I would actually recommend maybe taking a step back and asking, can this set apart from the continuity of the show in some way? Can this be a prequel? Can this fill in something to the side, or like some information we were wondering about, or something like that? Or can it just kind of be so distanced from the events of the show that it just kind of doesn't matter when it takes place?
So sort of like a Lost episode about some, character that doesn't really matter, that, you're just kind of, it could fit in other seasons, right? Like it's sort of, there's a couple episodes like that of, I don't know, like some minor character, we learn all this secret backstory and everything, and they end up getting bitten by a snake or something.
Are you talking about Nikki and Paolo from Lost?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking of. I mean, that could be like whatever season. It doesn't really matter, right? But,
yeah. But you're right. No, that's a great angle to take it. Like, you should aim for it to make sense and fit in, no matter what is currently going on in the show. You have to like go in with the assumption that most shows don't like drastically change their premise between seasons. Some of them do, and that's kind of like the whole point of those shows. What's that show, Miracle Workers? Is that what it's called on TBS, where the whole gimmick seems to almost be it becomes a different show every season? But so like it'd be really almost impossible to write a spec for something like Westworld unless you just pick, okay, this takes place in the first season. Forget the other seasons because they go so far off the rails and into different dimensions and stuff like this that it can be a challenge. I think you should just aim to write the thing that can be understood over with the greatest sense of longevity. Like, years down the line, if people read this, will they still be able to pick it up and make sense of it? The specifics of those choices will be really unique to your show, but just whatever you can do to ensure that the most longevity possible, you should go for.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Sure. And then even if the spec is really good, then even if the plot of the show goes a different direction, you're like, okay, technically this character died, but I wrote an episode about him. Would you read it? If you ask a showrunner that and the episode is amazing, then they probably won't care that. There isn't like a rule that says that it has to fit into the continuity in any kind of way. It's just that it keeps your options as open as possible. Okay, any other questions on that? I see a question from Megan, so more of a standalone episode might kind of work better. Yeah, for sure. Standalone episode. Okay, let's look at matching voice. So you have to read a bunch of scripts from your show, obviously. This should be obvious. The basic research of what you're doing is you're trying to act as if you're already on the staff. And since staffs are such like an amalgamation of different voices, like it's mostly the showrunner, because the showrunner has the final pass, and they're the ones that are making corrections and changes and doing rewrites all throughout the process, then it's mostly them. So you can consider them being like 60% of it. But overall, the sort of room has a voice of its own. We've been talking about Lost, so I just brought up a piece from the Lost pilot here because that staff was considered to have a really specific voice. Let's look at just this one page. You don't have to. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I'm just going to highlight some stuff from this page. You can read it on your own pace. So to begin with, you have to sort of see what is considered within the toolbox or within the rules of the scripts that this showrunner and this staff writes. I heard it expressed well recently in some podcast, I forget which one, that with screenwriting and TV writing, it's kind of like you're always teaching the reader how to read your scripts. It's like and the primary job of each script, or one of the primary first jobs you have, is to teach the reader how to read this one. And so within that, you are looking at these scripts as, oh, that's everything I'm allowed to do. That's everything that's within the toolbox that I've been given. That's all the tools that I have to play with, or the toys that I have to play with. Don't play with tools, kids. So to begin with, we can see setting up moments before they happen for a reason we're about to learn. So that sense of almost like storyteller-ish sitting around the campfire voice is really prevalent through all of the Lost scripts and in the kind of like Abrams Lindelof verse. This idea of you're listening to somebody very conversationally and casually tell you the story is pretty much all throughout. Lots of funny swearing for emphasis, though weirdly Lost is not a show with that much swearing on it. It's a network show with no F-bombs. The average episode has like 35 plus F-bombs just in the action lines. That's part of like the quirky fun that this staff likes to have. You can even see an example of that here. If it wasn't clear before, it's clear now. This guy is a Class A bad word there. You can see I've adjusted slightly for you, but you can see creative swearing is within the rules. It's within the tools that I have access to. What else? We can see an interest in reveals and really building up to these reveals. Look, as we reveal Claire in this moment, she goes for a final sip, and what she sees shocks us. Kate is wearing the handcuffs. Her jacket has hidden them from those around her, but holy crap, don't demonetize me, YouTube. She's the one the U.S. Marshal was taking back to the States, and the man beside her is that Marshal. Okay, so we're building up a lot to these reveals, then spelling out and emphasizing and sort of going out of our way to explain the impact of a reveal as it happens, within a couple lines. Like, obviously, we don't go on and on and on. So this is just the observations I made from looking at one single page of The Lost Pilot, but you have to read the whole thing to get a comprehensive sense of what is permissible within this writing mode. What is the vocabulary and lexicon that I'm working with? Is this a staff that likes to use really flowery long descriptions, or is this kind of really terse and succinct and right to the point? You have to study and match that voice to the greatest extent that you can. Let's look at a page from Gilroy. I couldn't find the Andor pilot, I'm sorry. I tried my best. So instead, I picked a page from Born Identity, because Gilroy writes in such a specific style that it's almost impossible not to, if you've read other scripts, to take one look at this and see everything that he's doing differently. Let's take a look at Gilroy's style and Tony Gilroy's style and ask what specific choices is he making here? What unique nuances do you notice in his writing style? And how would you go about matching this voice in a TV spec? I'll give you guys a moment to read.
Don't know where. Oh, okay. That's reading it there. Okay.
Okay, whenever you guys are ready, somebody feel free to speak up. Tell us what sets this writing style apart. What are the nuances here?
Well, the slug lines are pretty weird. They have the underline and the double dash. It's very descriptive.
I mean, underline slug lines is actually not that hard to find, especially in shooting scripts, which you can tell that this is from the scene numbers on it.
Oh, sure. But the formatting is something. Like the space around the double dash is preferred rather than jamming them together. Lots of double dashes. I do like that.
Yeah, this is sort of his thing. Let's look closely. Look at all the lines that end just like this. Incomplete thoughts. Fragments. His writing is completely saturated with them in a good way. You can see how many things don't even have a verb. The man alone doing chin-ups on the deck rail. Oh, well, it does have the verb doing, but how about this one? A ratty old espresso machine. Is there a verb there? No. Just a fragment. What else?
Another formatting quirk. It looks like there's a double space after every period.
That is something that used to be in certain style guides, and you will see on some writers kind of like carrying that over. It is like, I wouldn't necessarily think you had to match that if you were writing in someone's style. I know I mentioned you're trying to match it as best you can, but that is just going to take up a lot of extra space on the page, so I probably wouldn't do that. But in any case, you are correct that is there. It drives me crazy to see sometimes, but your eye gets used to it after reading it for a while. What about the interiority of the characters are you seeing here?
Well, using the pain, bathing in it, hoping that it will hold some answer for him. That's unfilmable. We can't do that.
Yeah, you can't do that.
I love unfilmables.
Yeah,
this is a good one.
You absolutely can do that. And if it's in the style and lexicon that you're using, you have to do that. So you can see that's something I can do. If I were writing an episode of Andor, that's something that I should in fact do. Diving deeper into the character's interiority, sort of spelling out their visible motivations and their kind of like inner. It has to always be playable, though. That's always the key with this. You can see someone using the pain and bathing in it. Like, that is... And maybe he's going a little deep, hoping it will hold an answer for him, is like, a little bit of story context that extends beyond just this line, but at the same time, it's still useful. Like, you can see that in the performance. These are playable things. If you say he's, like, if we open on a character and you say he's thinking about alligators, we'd be like, how do we know he's thinking about alligators? Has to be playable. All right, thank you for noticing those things. Got to match the voice as best you can. If there are certain quirks that are like artifacts of older styles or things like that, you don't have to like stick to every little grammatical point. People are looking to just read something easy. But in terms of like the linguistic lexicon and narrative tools that the writer is using, those are the things that you should also be painting with. It's like they have a palette and you have those same colors. That's a good point, Dan. Tony Gilroy perhaps learned on a typewriter. It is typically people that learned on typewriters that do this, but not always. Huge fan of S. Craig Zoller, but it's hard to read the double spaces. Okay, let's look at fitting into the big picture. So this is, I think, just... I guess we did already touch on this. Maybe I'm just repeating myself too much. Maybe I won't recap this entire slide, but let me just pull the most essential point from it, which is consider an idea that steps just outside the continuity, maybe something that happened in between scenes or off stage of another storyline that already played out. It helps if your story does not interfere with the main crux of the show's progression, but consider a what if or a prequel or a bridge. Perhaps those could work. Alright, so these are the shows that I know really well that are currently airing. And I've separated them from comedy to drama. And some of these are older and have been running a long time. We have Futurama and Family Guy in here. I actually did not grow up with South Park, so that is weirdly not in my like stuff I know really well. But any of these, I at least know all the main characters. Some of them better than others, which is why I even had this Simpsons activity in mind. Because I'm like, this was my favorite show for many, many, many years. And in terms of stuff that we could just pitch on the spot, I could instantly just very easily be like, okay, let's do one with Duffman and Mo. And then just kind of spiral ideas from there. In fact, let me just see if I can name all these characters without stopping. We have, from left to right, Ralph, Chief Wiggum, Edna Krabappel, Seymour Skinner, Agnes Skinner, Scratchy, Krusty the Clown, Apu, and his 8 octuplets. I don't know their names. That is my blind spot. We have Mo, Itchy, Otto, Abe Simpson, Homer, Marge, Santa's Little Helper, Snowball 2, Maggie, Lisa, Bart, Ned, Patty, Selma, Rod, Todd, Smithers, Mr. Burns, Groundskeeper Willie, Jimbo, Martin, and Milhouse. There we go. And that's not even all of them. Where's Bumblebee Guy? Thank you. Where's Disco Stew? So there are so many characters in The Simpsons. There's a billion specs you could do. It's like a pretty good one if you think you can really, really, really nail it.
Where's Timmy?
Who's Timmy?
Jimmy.
Oh, that's from South Park.
I'm sorry.
I wasn't allowed to watch it as a kid, so all the South Park references are just lost on me. Okay, let's ask, does anybody have an episode that they want to pitch of any of these? Or it could be something else, but I'm just going to be able to give you best feedback on these.
Well, yeah, if you don't mind looking at mine.
Okay, what show have you come up with an idea for?
What we talked about, Ghost.
Ghost.
Let me get it again, because you said it would get lost.
Yes.
Okay, hold on just a second. Give me just a second to do this.
Okay, we'll open the floor in the meantime. While you're getting ready, we'll ask, does anyone have a pitch ready to go they want to share? Don't you guys watch your favorite shows and come up with tons of ideas for episodes? I know I do. It's actually kind of a problem. I'll watch a show and be like, I don't even want to write my next thing. I just want to write an episode of this. When I was watching The Nick on Showtime, I was like, I have to write an episode of this.
Okay, there it is.
Okay, let's take a look.
Okay.
All right, so I've only seen the pilot of... I actually don't know a lot of I don't know the character names or the specifics, but you can feel free to take us into your idea if you want. Go ahead.
Okay, so basically the premise is that you have these, you can read it here. It says show premise. Married New Yorker Sam and Jay Arondikar think their dreams have come true when they inherit a beautiful country mansion. Their dream is of turning it into a B&B is complicated by the cost of the repairs and Sam's accident of falling down the stairs, after which she could be ghost from many different it should be eras, not areas, who live in the mansion. So there's ghosts who are from the time when the Vikings came to America, to Native Americans, to the Revolutionary War, up until like the 90s.
Right, got it. Okay, so the premise is they run a bed and breakfast, and they're sort of friends with all the ghosts that haunt the place.
Or rather, well, Sam is the one who can, the wife, can see the ghost. The man, Jay, he cannot. Jay is a professional chef, and Sam is actually a writer, but they feel that they've got the skills to turn this into an Airbnb.
Okay, great. Take us into your plot.
Okay, so it's called Ghost Pepper. When Jay makes a vegetarian dinner for a group of guests attending a vegetarian cooking contest, he includes stuffed ghost peppers. After he eats one, he can see the ghosts inhabiting the mansion. He and his wife Sam should be like that both now share this ability, but after the effects of the ghost pepper wears off, he no longer shares this ability. If he wants to see ghosts, he must eat ghost peppers, no matter how painful. And what I should have put in there is like he should interact with like a particular ghost to, shows him that the ability to see ghosts is beneficial to like the marriage or running the Airbnb or both. But he has to eat the ghost peppers in order to see the ghost.
Okay. So this is a good foundation. I would ask, to begin with, we would have the question: why does he need to continue to see the ghosts? Does he befriend one of them, perhaps, when he starts to be able to see them?
I'm thinking that maybe he befriends one of them, because there are ghosts there that like to play like D&D or something like that he likes to play, and maybe he makes friends with one of them. And now, if he eats the ghost pepper, he can have, a ghost friend to be able to play D&D with. Or there's one, Roberta, she's a wonderful jazz singer. Maybe he likes jazz and he would be able to hear her. Or I don't know, maybe there's other ones that he really likes, and he would like to be their friend, but in order to interact with them, he's got to eat the ghost pepper. But I was also thinking that, like, the Native American guy, Sasape, I think his name is, but they call him Sass. Maybe he's got some special herb that that Jay can use in his cooking, because he's a professional chef, and maybe the effects of the ghost pepper wear off before he can find out where the herb is. And he has to eat more to find the herb, and it's getting really getting to him, because it's really painful to eat the ghost pepper, but he really wants this this herb. I mean, that could possibly work, but there's got to, there does have to be some reason why he wants to keep interacting with the ghost and having to eat the ghost peppers.
Right. That's sort of the motivation for your whole episode. So that's important to nail down. So we're trying to dig into questions like, which characters are you centering on and why? So that means you're going to have to decide, well, it seems like you have your A-story character, but who are you pairing him up with? Who is the central relationship for this episode? You don't have to know right now, but go ahead.
Yeah, it would be Jay, and him and him eating the ghost pepper, and telling his wife, "Hey, I can see the ghost now," and she thinks it's great because now they have shared ability, and he likes it too, and but then it wears off, and he doesn't have the ability, and I'm thinking that maybe he would he would make friends with maybe Pete, who's one of the ghosts, who is a basically a Boy Scout leader, and he died, but they call it like, I forget what they call it. They call it something else, but maybe he makes friends with him because they both like playing D&D or playing something like that. But then maybe he begins to like the other ghosts too.
Let's pause for just a second. So you've got the immediate plot problem of he would need to make this friend before the ghost pepper wears off, which is a limited time, and he'd be in extreme pain. So that's not a state that most people would want to play a board game in, right?
Right. Okay. Maybe. Maybe the Native American guy. Maybe he's got an herb that cures the pain and allows him to have to be able to see the ghost, but before to find it, the ghost pepper wears off.
That's a good idea, but it solves his main problem, which is that wasn't the fact that it really hurts to eat these the main complication for this? If the guy solves the problem right away, see, this is why it's tricky. You got to always be thinking of like, if I make that choice, what problems will that cause or solve after I make it? So we don't have to write the whole thing now, but just be thinking like, what would the A story be? And also, once you have the A story, which would center on that relationship between Jay and I forget what you said his name was, but this other character who helps him with the pain, for instance, or I feel like you're gonna have to just that initial problem of when you're in that much pain, the only thing that you really want to do is stop feeling that much pain, and so that kind of limits your options to, is it someone that helps him with that, but that would would either get rid of his main problem or it would make the effect dissipate of the seeing the ghost in the first place. So there's an issue. So that might require some thinking to solve, of course, but that would probably make up your A story. And then after that, if you're just in a half-hour comedy, the B and the C story are still important, but they're going to be especially the C story is pretty minor. Like, it's only a couple scenes throughout. But the B story would be whatever else is going on. It would probably center around his wife, who would, as a result of hanging out with his new friend all the time, she feels neglected or something like this. So she befriends a different one of the ghosts and is like, well, I'm going to hang out with you then. And then you would ask, as for your C story, what's another character that we can bring in, or some other interesting conflict or some way that they can intersect. It's in pitching an episode, it's more than just picking a character for A, B, and C. It's like a pair-up of characters for your A, your B, and your C. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I realize I don't have to solve it right now, but trying to solve it, to me, I feel like, well, I'm learning all these things, and it's interesting and fun, and it makes me grow as a storyteller.
Great, awesome. Okay, well, give that some more thought, and who knows, maybe it'll inspire you to even write your own story, or you could write a spec of this if you wanted. That's always an option.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for volunteering. Let's reopen the floor. Does anybody else want to pitch a spec episode? No other ideas? In a room of creative writers?
I have a lot of ideas, just not very many for these shows in particular.
Oh, they don't have to be for these. They can be for whatever you want. But I just know these best, so I can't give like great story notes on anything else.
Probably something with a C character on Stranger Things would be the direction to go in. But I can't remember many C characters.
I've got some pitches for you. Can we do a Murray episode?
Murray? Is he a cop?
No, he's the reporter who knows karate and teams up with Joyce to go and save Hopper from Russia.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we could definitely do a Murray episode.
He's hilarious. I want to know why he knows karate exactly. Maybe he teaches a class. I feel like he sort of maybe beats up kids in his karate class and is sort of like too tough on them and stuff, but like makes them learn respect. It would sort of be like the Foot Fist way with Danny McBride. That's what I would guess his dojo is like. Any other ideas
Barbara,
for? You want some more ideas?
Everyone wants a Barbara episode.
Yeah, we could do I feel like the best Barb episode is what happened to Barb when she was taken to the Upside Down, and it would just be leading up to her death. But I wonder how you would bring the rest of the cast into it. Is Barb able to sort of like see everyone going on and living their lives as she's being pursued and devoured by monsters in the Upside Down, like what's it called, The Lovely Bones, something like that? Is that what to do with the Barb episode, or do we bring Barb back somehow? She never really died.
Why not just an episode that focuses on the bullies? Like have a team of bullies that's kind of like the Stranger Things team.
Sure. Oh, I love
focus
that.
on
Like
them.
the anti-team. So there's so many bullies on the show. We do have to ask which ones you mean, though.
Yeah, I don't know any of their names, but I know there's a ton of them. That would be some research would be required.
Do you mean the bullies who end up creating essentially a lynch mob in the season 4, or do you mean the group of girl bullies that end up breaking? Or no, 11 breaks her nose in the skating rink, and that group is a little like less intense. They're not like out to kill somebody. They're just like really ruthless and relentless. What scale of bullies do you want to deal with?
I think the lynch mob would be easier than the girl bullies.
Okay. So yeah, that lynch mob gets pretty messed up in the finale of the 4th season, don't they? We're going to be limited
I
for.
remember who they were. Was that the people with the Letterman jackets?
Yeah, the ones that Lucas starts hanging out with, and that sort of is like him branching out from his group, but then they sort of take him down this dark path, and he's like, no, I don't like you guys anymore. I don't want to be on your team. But they're like, it's too late, bro. You're in the frat now.
Yeah, I'd want to see like how they deal with the Upside Down.
Okay. So I think I think all or almost all of them die in the show, you may have to take a step back in the continuity a little bit, or maybe imagine that they get sucked into the Upside Down and we have some adventure with them there. That would be a little tough. I'm wondering exactly how it would work. Do you have an idea?
I mean, we haven't done ghosts yet. We could do. They're sort of like out of their bodies. They're trying to find their way back to their dead bodies or something. I'm not sure.
Ooh, that's kind of fun. Sort of like in Lock and Key, or yeah, that idea of being separated from. Wait, I guess we kind of have done the astral projection separating from your body, but we haven't done it in that ghostly kind of way as much. Or I wonder if maybe a character could get sucked into the Upside Down and then people think it's a ghost. Maybe that would be it sort of acts like a poltergeist, but really it's just somebody who has gained some kind of power in the Upside Down to affect more than just the lights. Maybe they, he finds the strength to somehow, he gets like a Vecna tentacle in his neck and he gains some dark power to actually manipulate and move things around in the real world.
I don't think it's as interesting as if they were alive and had to survive, though.
But yeah, they only enter the story, so that's just kind of a hard group to draw from, I feel like, because they enter the story so late, and then they play out their whole part, and now they're mostly dead. So how do we write a spec with them?
No one's ever really dead.
True.
Especially when the government and the Upside Down are involved.
That's true. You could always be like, he didn't really die. He was sucked through a portal, and he's going to show up next season. The show, it has done that before.
Or the Upside Down like makes clones of them, and they're identical even in their memories and stuff. They actually believe they are these characters.
There you go. That's a great basis for an episode, for sure, because that allows you to explore even the characters that have been removed from the timeline in some way. But it also acts as the source of primary horror for the episode, and has that very kind of like 80s body snatcher kind of vibe to it. A lot of Stranger Things is, really directly drawing from specific inspirations of sources, like it's E.T. and Nightmare on Elm Street primarily. So for this one, maybe you could do sort of like a body snatcher type plotline. I guess they did a little bit of that in season 3, but if you sort of like reframed it or said a different entity was responsible for it that had different powers, or maybe a different personality than ones we've seen before, or maybe some old villain that has faded into obscurity actually comes back, or something like that. I wonder what you could do with it.
Well, I mean, drawing from it, Pennywise the clown, that would be something he would do, is sort of bring back your bullies to terrorize you.
I think someone was just trolling us with electric guitar sounds. Let's ban them real quick. I've server muted for the moment. Goodbye. Whoop.
Thanks for that.
Okay. That was loud. Sorry about that. and we just wanted to hear your amazing music. If you we have other camps for showcasing your art besides this very moment. Okay. Anyway, were we in the middle? Do you want to wrap up this one, Luke? I'm sorry, I'm just like tormenting you for more plot details, but go ahead.
That's good enough. I think someone else might have an idea.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Let's reopen the floor. I thought somebody said something about a Squid Game idea earlier. Maybe that was also Luke.
Oh, did I? I pitched a bunch of ideas earlier. Let me find it.
I'd love to hear a Squid Game spec pitch. No one's probably really writing those, but that would be it's like one of the biggest shows in the world.
I had an idea for a Squid Game.
Great.
Pitch. Some people, some people who outsiders have managed to get hold of some clips from the Squid Game thing, and think we could become big doing something like that. So they try and do their own version, like a DIY version of the Squid Game thing.
DIY. It's like backyard wrestling, but with a death game.
Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty funny. Wait, why do they do it though? You said they want to get popular with it, or they think people would watch?
They think people was what they said. Oh, look how much money people are spending on this one. We could be like that.
Wait, that's just the Mr. Beast video. He already did this. He did real Squid Game, except a lot of people like sued him over how terrible it was. So maybe it was actually as horrific as you'd think. But go ahead. Any deeper you want to dig into this one? Who specifically is doing this? Which characters do you want to bring back? Is Gi-hun in the episode, or who are we bringing in from the core cast? The thing with Squid Game is almost everyone's dead. What do you want to do?
Well, I feel like it would end with the actual people who run Squid Game coming in and like killing them. It's like you're impeaching on our.
That was my idea. Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry. That they were impeaching on their property. It's like, well, you're trying to do a knockoff version of us. We can't allow that, and they just kill them at the end. So they do, so it's in the same world. It's like a one-off episode, and it ends with them all being killed off for trying to.
Not bad. Can I make some suggestions for you as to like ways to amp that up a little bit?
Of course.
So what I'm thinking is, to begin with, if you're saying that people sort of get the idea of Squid Game and decide to kind of mass market it in like a DIY way, it's almost like American Ninja Warrior, right? Like Ninja Warrior is such a big show overseas, we're going to port it over to the US and do our version here. Well, I don't think they'd be killing people if you wanted to do a mass market version of this. Unless are you saying that's what they latch onto about it? Because
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking if, to begin with, they're like, we do that, but we don't kill people, right? It's all the fun of Squid Game, but no one's actually dying. But then instead of the finale being the actual, like Ilnam's corporation finding out about it and moving in, instead of that being the finale, bring that into the premise scenes. They set up maybe just make Mr. Beast the main character. Why not? So Mr. Beast has set up his American Squid Game, right? And he's getting sued all the time. But it's basically raking in lots of money because he's turned it into mass entertainment. It was never mass entertainment before. If you remember the show, it was just being viewed by wealthy investors, not by the world. Yeah. So he's tried to turn it into mass entertainment, but we're not actually killing people until and also maybe the hook is we're not playing Korean games. We're going to play American playground games. We're going to play Foursquare. We're going to play or have our like the Squid Game take on Foursquare, right? What else? We have Dodgeball. We have Red Rover. You have games like that, right? Can you see like a Red Rover game where you have like people running into blades or something like that? Could be really cool. I think if you sort of like take that idea of so let me just finish. So they've set up a non-lethal version of it until the organizers swoop in and they're like, oh, okay, now we're gonna make an example of you. We're gonna fix your game and make it work the right way. Now you're gonna play Mr. Beast. And they send the organizers of the American version into their own thing that they just designed, their own obstacle course they just designed, but the original Squid Gamers have turned it deadly. So although originally they were raking in the money on like, this silly dodgeball game and the Foursquare game and stuff like that, now they have to play for their lives. I don't know. What do you think? Is that direction workable? Is that within the realm of what you were thinking?
I think so. I mainly want to see this idea of them doing like the backyard version of it, and it's not particularly as good.
Well, are they
But
killing
they're
people
like-
or not?
I don't. I personally did want them to have them killing people, like they would just like abduct people off the street, and the whole idea was they were like, oh, we're going to be like them, and so they were cutting corners to try and make things work. But in the end, it doesn't work out.
But so if they're not killing people, then your spec episode of Squid Game has substantially lower stakes, right?
No, I did want them killing people.
Oh, they are. So they're doing the backyard version of this, and yet they're still killing people? Isn't the whole idea behind the Squid Game in the first place that it could only really be organized by these like billionaires because they can cover up all these deaths and they can sort of like organize it on a private island and stuff? How is a backyard version of this able to... I know I'm grilling you right now, but how does a backyard version of this make sense? Go ahead.
Well, I think you just have the characters be really stupid, because I think you get those people who think, oh, I can be a serial killer, I'm going to be so cool, and there was like an example I heard where the guy tried to he thought he was going to be like the next Dexter. He lured people to his like place, and I think he ended up only killing one person, but he seemed to think that he was like the greatest serial killer of all time and he'd never be caught, and yet he was caught after his first kill.
Okay, but so you're asking for... But in this case, it would have to be a lot of people doing that all together.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and somebody rich enough to pay for them all, which is kind of like it's kind of at the heart of how it was working before. It was like these oppressed serfs are going to do what we say because we have all the money. Once you take that money out of it, it gets complicated, and now you're certainly... And also, you're kind of asking us to accept that the version of this where you are actually murdering people, are you saying that would actually become mass entertainment, or are the characters wrong?
No, I think they want to try and do the same thing as market it to like the elite few.
Oh, I was misunderstanding. I thought you were saying they wanted to come up with a version that would work in the mass market.
Though I feel like the mass market idea is interesting. I say with the version I was thinking about, they literally want to do... They see like they find a leak like version of Squid Game and go, this could be massive if we could market this to like investors as well, and because they're not very bright.
Are investors going to check out a DIY kind of version of this though?
Well, no, but I think they're delusional enough to think that they would.
Okay, and so what's the conflict of your episode?
Well, as I said, one of the conflicts is they're just not very good at it. So I think they set it all up. They keep trying to set it up, and the things keep breaking down, and people keep escaping, and so they have to go and hunt these people down to stop them from escaping and things like that.
Okay.
And then in the end, I do think that the main group swoop in and kill them off, because it's like, well, we can't have you ruining our IP, and that was the concept.
Got it. Okay, so we're doing Squid Game, except the organizers are incredibly inept. Basically, is the hook of your episode. Okay. So the stakes seem a little lower if our villains are inept, and also I think we'd want a clearer sense of who's actually going through the challenges, because like you're sort of framing it like the organizers are the lead characters, but that's not how the show works. The show is about the contestants. So who do you see going through it?
So maybe it was someone that was friends with one of the organizers. So it's like he was someone that was nice to them, and it's like, and it was like, oh, they're not a particularly nice. The person realizes that they're not a very particularly nice person, but they feel like they want to still try and stay friends with this person because they can see like, oh, maybe I can bring them back, I can change them. So the fact that they've invested all of that into this person and that person puts them in a death game, it'd be like a betrayal kind of thing.
That would be a pretty bad... One of the worst betrayals you could do to someone, I think, is put them in a death game, probably, yeah. So some good ideas here, definitely. I would, I was kind of waiting to see if they would do an American remake of, or like version of Squid Game, kind of like what they did with Money Heist. But it's been forever since this show was on. I think a lot of people remember it very fondly, though. So this is actually a good idea to write a Squid Game spec because the season 2 is coming out. So if you have an idea for one, I would actually do it.
I have a slightly different one, but I'll let someone else go if they want to.
Okay, thank you so much for your pitches, IB. Anybody else want to step in before Luke gives us more Squid Game ideas?
Going once, going twice. Sold. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Squid Game, but the foreign investors must compete.
Okay.
The question is, how do we get them there? I think it's pretty easy. The man in the black mask betrays them. You know, he gets them all a charter flight or whatever, and I don't know, he sets up some scenario where he can fake their deaths and, you know, steal their assets and stuff. And, you know, one of them is the mole or something, so all of them must compete because one of them betrayed him, and now they find themselves in the Squid Game.
Okay. It's a little like kind of the Saw vibe of it, of like all these bad people they all have like their own reason that they're there in terms of like their failings or their lack of morality or something that has brought them there to this point, which is different than the main show, which is almost about average people being screwed over and forced into exploitation, right? So that'd be a cool direction to take it. Do you see any of the characters from the show playing a role in this? Besides, you mentioned the I forget his name, but the guy that takes over, you know, post Ilnam's departure, I guess is going to be at the head of this. He's going to sort of be the central figurehead. Does Gi-hun show up? Who else? Do we have that kid?
I guess
Sabyok's brother? I guess. I don't know.
We'd have Gi-hun and we'd have a bunch of new Squid Game contestants. I don't know how exactly they're going to do it in season 2.
I assume just like that. I mean, that's pretty much the only option. What are we going to do? Throw Sabyok's little brother into the game?
Yeah, it seems like it'll be all new contestants.
I think so. Sungwoo's mom, maybe she's in the game, you know?
Could even do it like a prequel, like maybe not these foreign investors, but the original foreign investors or something.
Okay. So that to me almost sort of says that Squid Game was always like a big scam or a trap for the investors. Or are you saying that they sometimes don't kill them, or they always do? Like, is that like part of a cycle?
It probably would be part of the cycle if you did it like that. He brought up Saw. It would pretty much follow that idea.
It seems like it'd be tough to keep CEOs and stuff investing in your later years of your Squid Game, though, if they keep disappearing, doesn't it? Like, if they're just random poor people, then I totally get why random poor people keep signing up for it. But I think CEOs would look into it before they go to the death game, probably, right? Like, they would check up on it. So I wonder if this maybe it is a sort of deviation. Like, this is a group that somehow betrayed his trust, or, you know, like they wronged him somehow, or maybe they broke some cardinal rule of investing, or maybe they tried to tip the scales too much, or something like that.
It'd be easier to, you know, one of them is a mole. It's set in like the Squid Game season 2 timeline. One of the investors is a mole. The man in the black mask fakes said contestant's death or all of their deaths and puts them in the Squid Game.
Oh, he fakes their deaths to capture them. Oh, okay, that's cool. Very tough to do with a bunch of billionaires, but could potentially be possible if you yourself are a billionaire, which I think he is.
Yeah, clearly.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I'd love to see those characters are only really featured in one episode. They have a couple lines in the finale, but and their performances, as many have said, are a little suspect. But in any case,
I think it would be hilarious.
That's a great idea too, because that's like an example of a character they're literally masked the whole time. We don't learn almost anything about them. Where do they come from? Why are they actually doing this? If they're investing in this, what other messed up stuff are they investing in? Like, this must just be the tip of the iceberg if this is what they're into for fun, right?
Yeah, they unmask one of them. It's just Sackler. I forget his first name.
Sackler, what's that from?
The opioid family people
Oh, in real life,
The
yeah.
opioid crisis, the people that engineered it.
Oh,
Yeah,
God.
like,
If you
getting
wrote a spec episode of Squid Game and cast your favorite billionaires as the contestants, people would love that.
I'm sure.
Pick your favorites. There's too many to choose from. I mean, especially nowadays, in the light of certain recent discussions, let's just say, I think people would really respond to that.
Yeah, that could be its own show.
That's almost its own show, you're right. Okay, thank you so much for that pitch. Great ideas there. I see some ideas from Mario. Maybe these are joke ideas. I can't tell. He's talking about bringing Barbara back on Stranger Things. Do you have a real pitch?
My real pitch is actually the gunsmith thing. I usually just think of the single idea where you do Breaking Bad with a physics professor and a gunsmith, and
Right.
you just do the same thing as Breaking Bad but with physics.
Okay. Good points. Did you have a Stranger Things idea, or was that just a silly joke?
Oh, the Stranger Things idea was actually you would then take Barbara as a side in one of those kind of old school fantasy. You cross over to another world and you become king of that world, kind of like John Carter, but with Barbara.
Oh, Portal Fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah. This Barbara it will be called Barbara of the Upside Down World.
People would actually like that too because that almost sounds like a new show. But
It is.
it's
good,
like
right?
Adventure Time, but with Barb having adventures in the Upside Down. I mean, it sounds cool. People would love that because Barbara was one of those kind of classically like underwritten characters in the first season that they really realized that they took that feedback and they really elevated that character's importance after season 1.
So the ending of the episode is that she's always wanted to go back to the real world, but then the people in the Upside Down world, they need her, and so she decides to stay, and that will be the end of season 1.
Okay. Oh, season 1. It's a whole new show now.
I mean, the end of that, either it's a 2-episode arc or a season. I think it has legs.
Okay.
So that's why I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit like Where the Wild Things Are. The
Yeah.
story.
But as a horror story. Thank you for that. People love Barb. Okay, anyone else? We have about 10 minutes left. We could take more episode pitches or just questions based on anything we've talked about today.
I like the idea of in the Squid Game that the investors would keep investing to kill off one another, to kill off other billionaires, so that there's fewer players to collect as many toys.
That's true, yeah. If you had billionaires being the victims, certainly other billionaires would revel in their misfortune.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a good element.
Could we have Squid Game in space?
Sure.
Or they put it on a space station.
Okay. And
Zero G.
what games are they playing in space?
Well, if it's like an American version, then you could have dodgeball, but in space. I don't know any of the other American games. You could have hide and seek, but people are in 0G. Bulldog.
It sounds... I mean, I definitely watch it. It's almost like too much of a... Well, you know this. It's almost 2 different hooks for your season, though. Because they're like, we have all new games, and we're in space. It's and this, and this. It's like a hat on a hat on a hat, whereas just one of those things would have made for, like, the basis of a whole new arc on the show. So, probably not the best show to take to space overall.
I still think it would be fun, especially with the billionaire angle, with so many of them trying to
So
get
I,
as
so
well.
I just thought of something. You know, King Henry, the Tudors, he had like a lot of wives,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so in this alternative universe, he couldn't choose, and so he had an advisor advising that they would compete to be queen, and you would have Henry of Tudors, Squid Game, Housewives edition.
This is a Squid Game spec? I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's
I like the idea of doing death games to compete for a husband, but is that even the same show? That just feels like a completely different story.
No, it's just generated from the Squid Games thing, where you take Squid Games and Housewives and you somehow combine it.
Okay, I mean, yeah, but that just sounds like a new movie. I think you should just find a new angle on that one. Okay, let's wrap up with any questions on any of the things we've discussed today. I'll show you just what we have coming up in the boot camp. But last questions before we wrap up. So the class is next week, next Friday. Go ahead.
Sorry. My question was, are spec script based on existing TV shows still something that managers and showrunners want to read? Because I heard that now it was all about TV spec script, original TV spec script.
Right. Yeah. So we covered this in our first few slides, but just to recap, generally you're not writing these. Generally, these are for contests and fellowships, and for certain showrunners who occasionally will ask for them. Generally, you're not going to be asked for these, and you are incentivized in 90% of cases to write an original pilot. But there are occasionally reasons to write a spec script, and they can be really fun and great practice.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thanks for the question. Anyone else have a question based on anything we talked about today? Anybody want to write a spec after this? Or did I make it sound too doom and gloomy?
Well, it is kind of discouraging to know that, well, you can try your best, but, you're just probably not going to get picked.
Well, it's not really about getting picked. It's about showcasing your voice and acting as a sample. You're not submitting these to get staffed on the shows. You're writing these to build out your portfolio and show what you can do as a writer.
Right, but eventually you want to get paid for your work. It's not just a hobby.
Oh, you get paid. I see. I thought you said get picked for some reason. Get paid. Yes. Ideally, we'd like to get paid, but 98% of all scripts are not going to end up being things that we get paid for. So you got to find a way to love just writing scripts and reading them, of course. If you don't love it, it's a bad idea, because you're right. It's hard to get paid. Very hard.
I'm not saying that you don't love it, but it's sort of like the difference between being a hobby bowler and a professional bowler. You can bowl as a hobby, but if you're good enough to get on a professional bowling team, then you never get picked. It gets frustrating.
Right. Yeah, definitely can be. Okay, so let's wrap up here. We hope to see you all for our next week's class. Writing Thing of the Week shows, themed around Monster of the Week next Friday, Friday the 13th. You'll have an opportunity there to workshop your series and pilot loglines in that free public class. Following that, week 1 is also free and public. Story Engine to Outline is on December 20th. Just before the holidays, you're going to finalize that series and pilot logline and complete your story beats outline that week. We're picking up after the holidays. We have in the past sometimes taken that day off just because it's just 2 days after Christmas, and sometimes it's like nobody's coming to these things. So do watch the schedule just in case we make an adjustment there, but for now it's set for December 27th, 1 sheets and synopses, and then you'll be starting the scripts around the first week of January, finishing that script by January 31st. Okay, thank you so much for coming by, guys. We hope to see you soon at our next script camp, class, workshop, or event. Have a great rest of your weekend.